I'm Jeff Helfrich, State Representative for House District 52. Life's messy, government's messier. When I was on the street, I got to see what worked and what didn't work. And in Salem, I see a lot of things that aren't working. I want to cut through that red tape, get to simpler government, and get to stuff that works for you. Here's our next episode. That's perfect, right? All right, back to Basics Army. I got a special guest on today, Larry Campbell, former Speaker of the House. He was in the legislative body for a long time, and he brought us out of the minority and got us into the majority and maintained that for a long time. And so let's get to this podcast. Larry, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, and it was awfully nice being able to find you.
Yeah.
The directions were great.
Yeah, a little bit challenge here where the house is at, or the studio's at here. But thank you again for being here and being on the podcast. I think what people don't know is when I became leader, you were one of the first phone calls that I made, and I looked at history, and I if you don't know, I guess if people don't understand it, when you look in the office, where the minority leader's at or the majority leader's at, there's pictures on the wall. And those pictures are the former leaders that were there. And I saw that. I was like, Larry Campbell, that's Kevin's dad. Kevin is a lobbyist that took over for you and your group, the Victory Group. And I said, hey, can I get a hold of your dad? And I want to really pick his brain. And I made a phone call to you, and you said, Jeff, well, what can I do for you? And I kind of gave you a list of things that I'd like to talk about. You sat down and gave me, you came in with your wife, and you showed me your handwritten notes, which were like 5 pages of handwritten notes. And then you came with 12 pages of typed notes. And then you came in with this article or the edition from the Willamette Week and talking about you and what you were able to create and what you did. And you said, Jeff, insert your name everywhere it says Larry's at. And like that was it's a big lift, but I was so honored for you to be there. And I remember taking you on the House floor. He said, it's been like a decade, almost 2 decades since I've been down here. Sat at your old desk, and you went up to the speaker's podium up there. And it's such an honor. Larry, thank you for being on the show. We're going to unpack a lot of stuff, but you changed the politics of Oregon for a long time, and I appreciate that.
Well, at that point in time, I hadn't been spending much time in the process, but you impressed me. And I said, there's a guy that's going to provide leadership, put us back off the top. So yeah, that was the reason I spent that kind of time.
I appreciate that. I mean, I really do. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of effort to be there and kind of keep all the cats going in the same direction. But you were able to do it, and I was trying to replicate what you did. And unfortunately fell a little short to that, but there is hope. I believe, what Leader Drazen's going, what the path she's charting. I think we can get back to getting some seats back and getting back control of it.
Good news.
Yeah, it is. So Larry, what I do here is my Back to Basics podcast is about how do we get back to basics in government, simplifying it. But what I want to do is read your bio and then kind of start off with some questions after that. Okay?
I'll be interested in that.
All right. Let's see if I get your bio right. Larry Campbell served in the Oregon House of Representatives from 1979 to 1995, representing Lane County, and was Speaker from 1991 to 1995. Born in Des Moines, Iowa, he moved to Portland as a child and later attended Lewis and Clark College, where he became president of the Young Republicans. After a 30-year career with Pacific Telephone and Telegraph, that's telephone telegraph back in the day, he moved to Eugene and won his first election in 1978 in a heavily Democrat district. As minority leader in 1992, he orchestrated the 1990 Republican takeover of the Oregon House, the party's first majority in 19 years. After retiring from the legislature, he became a prominent lobbyist, founding the Oregon Victory Group, which became the state's largest non-party lobbying group in 1990. With that, Larry, you had a leadership strategic vision to reshape Oregon politics. Let's talk about your early career and role as the Republican and you in the minority and how you took Republicans back to the majority in the House.
That's a wide area to talk about, but I'll take a shot at it.
Yeah.
In the first place, when I came into the legislature, we were about 6 seats short of control. And I had an interesting combination with the minority leader at that point in time. It was Gary Wilhelm. And the contact we had was simply this. I was a district manager for the telephone company and had responsibility for Southern Oregon and Eastern Oregon in all phases. And Gary Wilhelm was the manager for the telephone company in Klamath Falls.
Okay.
So when it came to the legislature, he was in charge. When it came to the regular job, I was.
Yeah.
So we built a great relationship.
Yeah.
And I didn't take a real interest in other campaigns. My first year in the legislature, Gary was the minority leader, and I watched very closely what he did and how he did it. And the next session, Paul Hanneman took that job, and Paul is a fantastic legislator, but wasn't really interested in taking on the leadership position from the standpoint that you have more responsibility than the legislature. You have responsibility for seeing to it that your party has a majority of the members. And so a minority leader, basically, which I became for 8 years, was a challenge to build the number of members we had to the point where we could take control. So I was very active and involved as a legislator with my responsibilities for my district as a minority leader. But where I really was important to the Republicans was that I was the leader outside of the legislature in recruiting candidates, getting people involved, raising money. That's a big job for a minority leader.
It is.
Not only that, but when you're in the minority, you don't have a lot to say about what's going on in the legislative process. And one of the assignments that a minority leader has is that you have to work on pieces of legislation that you don't like. You have to convince people from the other party, which is very difficult, to join you in order to kill that kind of legislation. And
Right.
we were supportive. Back in those days, there was real cooperation between Republican and Democratic legislators and Republican and Democratic leaders.
Right. Just in my first stint and then coming back, there's the extremes of both parties on each side there. And then there's that middle ground where people want to get some stuff done. And it's that relationships that you build. But I want to go to your first campaign when you got in the legislature. What challenges did you face? And then the next part of that question would be, how did that shape your approach to politics?
Maybe how does it identify your approach to representing the people that elect you? One of the things that happened to me is my first assignment to run for office was in the 53rd district, and I think that's right. And basically, the fellow that held it before me was Ted Kulingoski.
Oh, okay.
Ted Kulingoski, of course, later became Attorney General. He became governor. And 58% of the voters in that district were Democrats. And so I took on a real challenge in running in the district.
Right.
It opened up because Ted replaced Senator Brown when she left the legislature. And that was a move and a promotion for Mr. Kulingoski.
As in Senator Kate Brown or different Brown?
No, this was a senator from Eugene area.
Oh, okay. All right.
Senator Brown was appointed to the court.
Okay.
And as a judge. And Ted basically just moved up from being a House member to the interesting thing about running was that I started running as an incumbent before I was ever elected. Things happened in my district. I moved right in, and for example, I got special school signs at stops where our buses were stopping that they weren't able to get done. I worked on a local project. I basically spent an awful lot of time in the district meeting people. That was one of the challenges that you have when you start from behind.
Right.
I don't know. I can talk about the campaign. As I mentioned to you before we started this, 58% of the registered voters were Democrats, and I visited over 8,000 homes. And I think that had a very definite effect on the fact that I ended up winning with 63% of the vote.
So for people that are going to watch or listen to this podcast, when you say visit, that was knocking on their door,
And talking to them.
And not just leaving literature, but like actually having a conversation with them. Hi, I'm
And
Larry
you had
Campbell.
to be effective in 40 seconds or you never got it done.
Yeah, your elevator pitch, right? You get about 40 seconds before they slam the door in your face. You go tell the president. No, it's not. I'm not at the federal level. I'm at the state level. You'll see me more. I live here.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You were credited if orchestrating the takeover in 1990 and Republicans getting control of the House. It was the first time in 19 years. And you had served as the minority leader. How did you achieve that shift?
Well, basically, taking control started in 82. And everything we did outside, remember I mentioned that the minority leader's job was outside as well as inside. And the job that we did outside was learning how to get people elected, learning how to be effective, having an opportunity to show people that if we were given the opportunity to lead, that it would be worthwhile for them. And so it continued to improve as we moved through the years, and we got more successful. One of the keys, though, was I was able to raise money, and the business community supported us substantially. And up until then, we'd been losing close races. And in almost every case, it was where the unions, who were our adversaries at that time, basically had more money than we did and dumped it in the races. And at the end, we ended up losing the close races. So one of the things I had to do was develop a PAC, and it was identified as Victory PAC, that raised the money that matched the folks on the other side. And so we weren't losing because of dollars. We were losing if we didn't have the right candidates, or if our candidates weren't do what the leader did, and that is go door to door.
Right. That was so my first foray when I was in the legislative body. It was Senator Thompson, Chuck Thompson. He said, Jeff, this is how you're going to win. You're going to go knock doors. And we knocked doors, and he touted, 10,000 doors. And I mean, my first one, I was around 7,000 doors, but every day I'm out knocking doors for 4 or 5 hours a day.
Have you ever heard of Senator Bob Packwood?
Yeah.
Well, it's called the Packwood Bible. And it starts by telling legislators, first of all, you have to have people know your name. So every place you turn, there's going to be a sign that says Larry Campbell.
Right.
The second thing you had to do, basically, after you've done that, is that you have to knock on the doors. And it was interesting because of all the time I was in the legislature, 16 years, I'd go back. I continued to do knock on doors every election, less than the original, but every election. And people would invite me in, and on my second, third, and fourth, and so on races, basically I had time to talk to them instead of the 40-second pitch. And
just have a conversation with people.
Just come on in and talk. And they would show me their scrapbooks where I had written a letter congratulating their son on graduating from high school.
Right.
Or I'd mentioned the fact how pleased I was that they had a baby. All of those things were part of my job. And I got up at 5 o'clock every morning when I was campaigning. And my job was to handwrite letters to people who had given me help or people who were interested in contacting me. And it was amazing the number of those people that came back year after year to remind me of my kindness when I first ran.
Yeah, that goes a long way. I know, like for me, when raising money and people donate, I write a personal note to them. A little personal note. Hey, so-and-so, thank you so much for your donation.
5 o'clock in the morning.
And I'd stay up late at night because I'd get the kids up to go to school. So no, that personal touch, or the birthday cards you send, or just little things that were in the newspapers, the clipping, hey, congratulations on this, or the school, or whatever it was. And there was, I think it was in 23, Corbett won the state championship in basketball, and they had beaten Anna Scharf's team and Representative Scharf, and then Representative Bosshart Davis. That was kind of their school where they're at, that area of their school, and they're like, it's just because of the twins that were there. Next year we're going to get them. I was like, they still got beat. So that's the kind of fun you have on the floor when you have your other representatives there. You can start poking and having fun. Oh, my high school team was better than yours.
Well, another thing that we did is we sent a birthday card to anyone that's over 65 years old until my third session in the legislature, when I got so many complaints from people who were 60 that we changed the years.
So when you made that shift from minority leader to speaker, what was like one lesson? We've talked about this before, but the leadership lesson that taught you about leadership and how to kind of navigate getting everybody on the same page, doing what you need them to do.
Well, one of the things that was interesting from my perspective and hadn't been done is I had every Democrat come into my office and tell me what committees that they would like to serve on. And people looked at me and said, you're really kidding, because the way it had been handled is the majority and the speaker of the old days basically determined which members of their caucus, which is the majority, and which member of our caucuses, which was the minority, would serve on committees. And it was very few folks whose request I couldn't acknowledge. And of course, most legislators serve on 2 or 3 committees. Mm-hmm. So they might not get their first committee, but they always got one of the committees that they were interested in. Now, why is that? Well, you learn in a hurry, even when you're in the majority, that it's difficult to get tough legislation into committee and out of committee and passed through the House and Senate. And it's meaningful to be able to sit down with people that you had worked with and put on those committees and ask them or explain to them why it was important to pass the bill.
And that kind of ties into leadership, the relationships, right?
Absolutely.
It's relationships and
So I believe in relationships. In fact, I'm the only speaker that, we have a lot of people in the Capitol that are wonderful people that their job is there. They're not legislators. They're not involved in the legislative process. And I would hold an event for our building service people and all of those people who work nights and attend that. And I did that twice a term. And then you have basically an indication that you really are interested in more than just legislation.
Yeah. I think out of our conversations we had in that nice paper that you gave, there's several pieces of paper, and reading that. And,
you read it?
Oh, I read it all. I read it all. Devil's in the details. The idle hands are the devil's work. Give somebody a job, right? And those are your little stories you'd have and your little funny stories. But I think one of the things I did in my law enforcement career, and it similar to what you did, but the power of coffee in your law enforcement, because I would always wanted to go out and hit the street, go get a blue sheet, which is arrest somebody. And then you kind of get a pal around. I had to earn that cup of coffee, and I didn't really drink coffee. It was like hot chocolate. But that moment before you get to really into work stuff, just talk about family, talk about what's going on, and actually caring about somebody others outside of the work stuff. And what I did is I went around and talked to the individual. When I first came in the legislature, I talked to all the staff, and this, hey, what's going on? Hey, Rep, how can I help? Just come by, say hi. What's going on? What do you do? Where
that was the secret to success. The staff are the ones that really make things happen.
Yeah. And then I went and talked to all the members, and then just introduced myself, who I was, and how can I help? Where can we find some intersecting points to get some stuff done? But then when I became leader, what I tasked my staff to do was, you will go out and talk to every staff member that works for our members, and then talk to them, see what was successful and where HRO could improve. HRO had Republican office, or House Republican office, and say where were improvements? What would you like to see more out of HRO? How could we help do that? And then once they came back with that report with me, I said, now you go talk to all the members and talk to the vice chairs. And then I had my policy people that were part of the policy that would pay attention to different transportation, healthcare, you name it. Go talk to the vice chairs, then talk to those members. And then I said, when you're done with that, your next assignment is to go talk to all the friendly lobby groups that have those interests that are part of there. Like, they came back and reported to me. And I said, now you go talk to the opposition lobbyists that are going to want to try to kill the bill. Why would we want to do that? Because you got to figure out what is going to make them tick, what they want to see good and what they don't want to see. And they were just kind of very surprised that I took that approach. But one, it's relationship building, but two, know what's going on and how it affects things. But that then caused people just to talk.
I'm going to credit myself for that wonderful activity that you went through, because I'm sure someplace in that material I gave you explained that you should do that.
Yeah.
But it didn't really come from me.
No.
And you're to be congratulated, because one of the real keys of success of the legislature, both minority and majority, is communication.
Yeah. And it's just, we can differ on guns and abortion all day long. Let's put those aside, but where can we have a conversation about something can we get some agreement here or not? Because if you're in the minority, the majority can just push through in whatever agenda they want. We saw them do that when it comes to some of these abortion bills or gun bills. But I think when you have a communication, I think that makes just having a good relationship. You don't have to throw grenades all the time.
I'm not going to give you names.
Okay.
But when I was speaker the second time, it was important to me to have in my pocket a Democrat or two that I could count on helping me in a serious bill that we were going to be 1 or 2 votes short.
Mm-hmm.
And those 2 legislators got exactly the committees they wanted, and they were the best committees in the legislature.
Yeah.
And I only had to call on them a couple of times, but it was important, and they knew what I was doing. They knew that I was going to need them, and they were always there for me if I really had a problem. And on 2 occasions, I asked them for the support, and on 2 occasions, whether they supported the issue or not wasn't the question. That they performed and did what I asked them to do.
That's getting a bill out of committee and getting it with a bipartisan type support, or where you have a member, when your member's like, I'm a hell no on this no matter what. It's like, okay, but it's a good piece of legislation. And I think that really dives into my next question was, when you transformed how government works with Republicans in there, what were some of your key priorities when you were speaker to get pushing an agenda and getting kind of back, what I would say back to basics? Because we can have this Republican-Democrat conversation, but less government's better, less spending's better, and giving people the freedom to go, what businesses need to do is go, hire employees, make something, and then create good family wage jobs, and it all helps out in the ecosystem instead of taxing all the time. What was some of your key priorities that made you successful?
Well, this may be considered just words, but I encourage legislators on both sides of the aisle to do what they were sent to do in the legislative process. And they're sent to represent the people. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is I was considered a people's legislator.
Mm-hmm.
And the folks in my district knew exactly what I was doing. I advertised very well. Every week there was an ad in the paper that said, if you have a problem, please call me. And 2 of my 4 boys handled a lot of those calls. We had a state line, and they loved it. They got to that telephone, and some of my constituents would talk to them for 45 minutes. But the whole idea was I was there to represent my people. And when I say represent my people, I'm talking about the people in the state of Oregon. And what we tried to do was work on legislation that was beneficial to the state and to everyone, Republicans and Democrats.
Right.
And one of the biggest problems that I had were the strong lobbying groups who basically, because of the money they gave or because of the position that they had, felt that they owned the legislature and not the people of the state of Oregon. And basically, I won't tell you which lobbying group it was or what organization it was, but they didn't endorse me my first campaign. My second campaign, they did endorse me because they knew I was going to win.
You're a sitting member, yeah.
And that's the way it happened for several elections. Finally, on my last election, after I met with their group like you always do, they asked me what I might like to say. And this is going to give it away. And I said, if you would spend as much time and interest in educating children as you do in lobbying the legislature, you'd be more effective. They didn't endorse me.
Yeah. Yep, we know who that was.
But going back, I try to tell our folks that don't vote no on a bill and just because you oppose it personally, because particularly if you're in the minority, vote on the yeses and nos based on your interest and concern for the people that you represent and the activities that you favor, not just, in other words, we didn't have many situations where the entire caucus voted on a bill that was going to pass.
Right.
And there's a lot of bills that you face as a legislator, both a minority and majority, that you don't have a view on. So why put yourself out and doing something that is opposition to your people you represent just to be a no or just to be a yes?
So that kind of goes back to when I came in the legislative body. So as a police officer, for me, very pragmatic. How do you solve a problem and then move on to the next one? Just problem solving. And that's why I took that with me in the legislative body. But I remember some of the senior members that were, trying to help the new members understand what's going on. Is the word was, it's always easy to say no. You'll never get in trouble for a no vote, because if it's a yes vote, you always have to explain it. But that kind of directly conflicts with what you just said, because yes, this legislation does make sense to me. It makes sense to the represent my community or the people in the state. And so that easy is that always to say no, but sometimes it's hard to get to yes, but it makes sense to get to yes sometimes too.
Well, not only that, but think of the number of times that you could get to yes, and when your bill is up, they don't say no because you always said no.
Right.
If you got a reasonable bill and it really has no question that it has merit, the Democrats from time to time blocked. In other words, they vote no, just to be ornery.
Yeah, just to lock up, to cause problems.
And, and when we're in the minority, we've done some of the same things.
Right.
And the point being that what you want to do is you want people to understand that you're there for good things, and you're going to oppose bad things. But if the good things come from the other side, vote for them.
Right.
And that is a big change, because I will say that one of the real benefits that I remember as a legislative leader was the cooperation that I got from the president of the Senate, John Kitzhaber. And
Democrat?
And Democrat, later governor.
Yep.
And one of the things that is important is that leadership on both sides should be talking and not shooting at each other. And John Kitzhaber was a perfect example of somebody that was willing to talk.
Yeah. So the legislative priorities that you had for Republicans, and we can say Republicans, but it's for the people of Oregon, how much did you rely on polling and ideas and temperature and stuff, or where did the ideas come from? Because polling now it's easier and it's more complicated because you have cell phones and landlines and less landlines and online polling and things. What was your kind of guide? What was your benchmark of getting good legislation besides the lobby coming to you and things like that, saying we have a bill to fix this?
Actually, I looked to my members, but interestingly enough, I also looked at Democrats. If they had something that itched them or that they had a problem with, we would be willing to sit down and talk about it and see if there was a solution. When I went into the legislature, my number one objective in mind was children and families. Our ability to handle the problems of children in this state were dismal. The organizations were completely ineffective. They spent money. We had duplication, one over the other, and the programs weren't necessarily effective. Do you know how long it took me to get my legislation on children and families past the legislature?
Probably 6 years.
14 years.
Oh.
And the interesting thing about it is that John Kitzhaber sat down with me and helped me with that bill. I was also helping him with a bill on the medical side. And John was helping me. And when the bill came to the House, interesting enough, it got in a committee that was chaired by one of the more aggressive legislators, John Menace.
Yeah.
And
he came out of the Portland Police Bureau.
Right. And we had a 19-member committee that put that legislation together. Bless you.
Excuse me.
And it passed the House because it was a speaker's bill. And it went to the Senate, and we thought, what's going to happen? And the committee chair in the Senate saw the bill, was assigned to a specific committee by the governor, and that senator was one of the people that helped put it together. Nice. And if you looked at the makeup of the Senate, a majority of the members in that committee were involved in putting that legislation together. And so the bill flew through the Senate. And today, if you look back at children and families issues, we combined organizations, we improved things, we funded it properly. Now, I understand that a lot of those things have been dumped in the garbage again.
Yep.
And
the foster care systems.
And somebody,
right
it's
now.
all part of it.
Yeah.
And somebody should take our old legislation, sit down with it, and reanalyze it and put things back in order. But like I say, that shows you something that a legislator goes into the process with something that they really want to get done, and sometimes it takes forever to accomplish it. That's why it's important for you to continue to run.
Thanks. It's, I think it seems to me, I've been around the block at least once now, I'll call it, and going on my second around the block. But it takes at least 3 sessions to get some really substantial legislation done as a legislator. If it's a committee bill or governor bill or speaker bill or Senate president bill, those will usually get pushed through because they can push those levers and pressure points. But it takes about 3 sessions to get some meaningful legislation done. It seems like you have long, short, and long. And you didn't have short sessions when you were there. It was just long sessions, but you had a bunch of special sessions too, right?
Yes, we did.
How many special sessions? What was your record special session in?
The shortest special session is the one I always like to talk about.
Okay.
We were after ballot measure 5, talking about taxes, and the governor at that time had a sales tax that she believed should be passed, and we were willing to work with her, and we evaluated it and so forth. And so finally, between sessions, she decided that there should be a special session passing her sales tax bill. Now, there's one thing I learned in the legislature, and that is if you have something you're really interested in, make sure you've got the votes. We told her the bill is not going to move, and it was the shortest session in the world because she called us in, even though it was clear that she didn't have the votes. And basically, 2 days later, we were on our way home. That to me indicates
that would have been Roberts, right?
That,
Roberts?
my favorite governor.
Yeah. Okay. I was because back then I was a Portland police officer working on the streets where there was riding horses or a mountain bike and didn't pay that much attention to politics. And now I'm talking to the speaker. And now I was in the leadership role. I was like, the world has come full circle for me. It seems like
that was one governor that I had very little conversation with. She had her own process. And I don't disagree that she has that right, but she didn't work well with the legislature that was in control.
Yeah, interesting.
That's why I was pleased to see both Kitzhaber and Kulingoski as governors, because they understood the process. They were reasonable. My son Craig worked for Kulingoski, both in the Attorney General's office, and then when we started our business, the governor asked if we could pull Craig away from us, and he spent 3 years with the governor. And when he went to the governor, we told him he could have a Campbell for 3 years.
Yeah,
and at the end of 3 years, he wanted him to continue, and always with a smile on my face, I refused the governor's request.
Can't help you out, Mr. Governor. Sorry about that. Did you pay attention? So when I was leader and the Measure 110 and the reforming and recriminalizing drugs, how much did you pay attention to that? What was going on with that?
Well, the reason I didn't, you mean now?
Yeah, now, yeah.
Well, I have to admit that I hear my son doesn't talk to me very much about his lobbying experience.
Yeah.
But I know that law enforcement is extremely important to our company, the family company that we established after I got out of the legislature. And basically, his job in working for law enforcement, both the sheriff's office, he represents the sheriffs, he represents the Chiefs of Police Association, and does pro bono work for the state police. Mm-hmm. Those are issues of great concern to him. And more today, for some reason, than back in the old days, when we didn't seem to have quite as much. law enforcement. That's something I want to mention to you.
Uh-huh.
When we left, they said, how did a legislator fit in to a lobbying firm? And I've got to tell you that the most important lobbyist in Salem is a legislator. Legislators bring their own legislation. Legislators move legislation from one point to the other. They have to convince each other, and they can't lie to each other.
Right.
Well, that's what an outside lobbyist does. Same thing. They have bills that they're paid to represent. They also have to be prepared to give the legislature both sides of the issue. And once a lobbyist lies, the lobbyist is no longer effective.
Right. That goes back to giving your word, where if you say you're going to vote a certain way and you're a yes vote or no vote, and then you turn around and flip in the middle of it, that you've lost credibility.
And that's a legislator who loses credibility with the lobbyist. And the lobbyist represents lots of people.
Right.
And so that legislator has to recognize that when they lie to a lobbyist, they're lying to a big segment of community.
Right. So you touched on that. You kind of unpacked that a little bit, but let's get a little bit further in unpacking. 1995, you left, and then you created, it was the Victory Group, right?
Correct.
So walk me through what the Victory Group was, and then...
I'll tell you a little story.
Okay.
I'd always wanted to have a company, a family company.
Mm-hmm.
And on Thanksgiving, the end of my legislative career, and I had already identified that I was leaving the legislature, we were sitting down over dinner, Thanksgiving dinner at our home, 4 boys, Grandma and I. And I said, hey, guys, how would you like to start a new business? And every head went no. And the reason it went no is because I'd always talked about buying a service station, with a white shirt, a black tie, and a little vacuum cleaner to go cleaner under your feet. Uh-huh. And I said, no, that's not what I have in mind. I said, we could represent the people that have community or businesses in the legislature because we have experience. 3 of us had either elected experience or worked in the Capitol.
Right.
And Kevin was with Focus on the Family, Dr. Dobson in Colorado, and he says, I'm in. And Craig was working for the Attorney General, and he said, I'm in. Carlin had a travel agency that she was with, and I'm in. And basically, we all quit our jobs, and we started our new business together as a family. A couple of quick things. One is, in order to take a client, we had to have a unanimous vote of all of us because we were not going to take clients that we couldn't respect.
Yeah.
The other thing is that basically each of us would commit, even though we didn't have a dollar or a customer to begin with. Well, our first customer, and you'll be interested in this, was the chiefs of police. And they're still with us, 40 years later or whatever it is. And the sheriffs came on much later. We had the loggers and so forth. Now, the company has 1 million, AAA, Oregon Hospital Association.
Right.
But in every case, we had to be convinced that the customer that we were going to represent, or the client that we were going to have to represent, had the kind of credibility that we could support.
The values. Right.
And that was a family value. It was really interesting.
You touched on it. And that's fascinating that, you just didn't take a client on just to get the paycheck. Like, no, we want to make sure their values align with ours as a family. That's
we represented them sometimes on issues that we didn't agree with, but that wasn't our job.
Right.
But they had to have a reputation that we could live with as a family.
Yeah. So let's talk about your experience. You touched on it just a little bit, but I want to unpack it some more when it comes to your legislative experience and then working at it into lobbying. How was the coming back into the building, because you had left for a little bit and then created the business, but those relationships that you formed from the legislators, and then there's turnover, but kind of walk through the parallels of that. And you did. I want to just kind of get a little deeper in that when you actually walk into an office and you're starting to lobby people, because I think there's a misconception out there of what lobbyists are and who they are, and it's the evil lobbyists and they're just representing the people that want to keep money or change. It's just more than that. So talk about what an actual lobbyist does, and then talk about how your experiences really helped you push consequential legislation that made a difference, even though you weren't writing the laws. You're just getting the people to say, yeah, I can support this, and this is a bill we can get behind.
Well, as you said, I kind of touched on it when I suggested that a lobbyist or a legislator and a lobbyist have the same kind of background and jobs. In essence, when I went to talk to a legislator as a lobbyist, I was doing the same thing that legislators were doing with each other. Now, one of the tough things for me, think about this, is I became a lobbyist, and there's a substantial number of Democratic legislators that I had served with. You think that might put a question mark in where you've killed somebody's bills in the last couple of years and so forth. And it was interesting to me because I always had the feeling that I had the respect. And the reason I had respect wasn't because I was an ex-legislator. It was because they felt that my word was good. And that's where I went back to the comment I made about a lobbyist who is dishonest or misrepresents is soon not a lobbyist. And the people that I was dealing with, even though I'd been on the opposite side of issues many, many times with a number of them, were always willing to talk to me, always willing to listen to my story. And it was my job to convince them that the legislation that I was supporting or opposing was worth supporting or opposing.
Yeah, I know, like the police chiefs and sheriff's association there's only one time that the sheriffs didn't endorse me, but the police chiefs did. And I think that's important in that. But what I want to mention is that good lobbyists, when they come in my office, they talk about this legislation. Oh, this is a great bill. Here's all the reasons why. And then I ask, well, what's the person behind you going to say that it's a bad bill?
See, that's a point that I made.
Yeah.
A good lobbyist comes in with that answer before you ask it.
Some don't, though. Now. That's why I question their lobbyists, right?
But see, they're not effective.
Correct. Yeah.
You've got to be trusted as a lobbyist, and secondly, you got to be darn sure that the information that you give the legislator doesn't put them out on a limb by misrepresenting it, and misrepresenting very well mean I just didn't tell you a whole story. A lobbyist has to know what the whole story is and has to be willing and able to share it and offset the answer to it if it's something they disagree with.
There's a current piece of legislation that's going on right now by a union, and it basically talks about wage theft, and there's a whole bunch of things behind it. But it was interesting. One of the new twists and turns in this was having contractors be responsible for the subcontractors if they don't get paid. And it's this union bill wages, and they go along the lines of, well, there's human trafficking going, they're paying under prevailing wage. All these things are going along with this. But one of the things that they said that it didn't affect was homeowners. So if I provide myself as a general contractor, or I'm the general contractor, and then have my subs, or I hire a general contractor, I'm on the hook now because I'm the homeowner. And they said it wasn't going to. And there's just kind of this conundrum going on with this. And it's like, that's just, you got to have all the information. Like you said, now all of a sudden there's some stuff that people are questioning the motives of people and what was going on. And it wasn't the bill, it's not in the bill. And that's trying to walk through some of that stuff. And it's just like, well, now can I trust this person or not? Because he gave me one bit of information, and now it's not right. And it falls back to you got to be honest.
Well, and interestingly enough, you can have legislators that are dishonest too. Mm-hmm. I remember very well, we had a legislator, Liz Van Leeuwen, and bless her, she read every bill. Now, can you imagine 3,500 bills? Was, if it was going to be dealt with in any way, she read it. And it was a blessing to the caucus because legislators don't have time to read all the bills that come through. And she came to me, she says, Speaker, I take it back, it was Minority Leader. There's a bill on the floor, and we were late in the session, and we had a midnight session. And she says, Leader, she says, have you read that bill? And I had to be honest and say, no. And she says, that's a major tax bill. And they were proposing it as, just a piece of garbage legislation, which happens. And we defeated the bill that night, fortunately, with some Democratic legislators who didn't understand it either. And it was misrepresented. And it was a legislator that misrepresented it. Now, that's important. Legislators have to be above reproach.
Yep.
And they've got to be honest about their bills that they introduce. And they've got to do what you and I want the lobbyists to do, and that is explain the pluses and the minuses.
Yeah. Because if you don't know what the negatives are, and then all of a sudden you find out, wait a minute, I had no idea that was going to cause that ripple effect downstream that's going to hurt a business in my community when I didn't think it was going to. That's just bad. That's just bad politics. That's what that amounts to.
Well, and that's why your caucus has to separate things out so that when a bill hits the floor, someone in the caucus has knowledge of the details.
Yeah.
Because so many bills hit the floor, and particularly late in the session, that you don't know really what's involved. And you need to be well educated on what you're voting on.
Yeah, and I think there are, to your point about good lobbyists, those are the good lobbyists, the small table that you would have that watch some of these bills that have a vested interest in them, do bring up the point, here's where this is a bad bill. If you didn't read this, this is what this actually means. And then you go to like legislative counsel. Can you explain this section of the bill? Is this a possibility? And if they come back, yes, then all of a sudden it's a red flag. Go talk to the speaker. If you're in the minority, or whoever you need to talk to, like, hey, this is a bad portion of this bill. We can't have this. But when you were speaker, did you ever have a bill fail on the floor?
Personally?
Yeah.
No, but it's because I didn't have many bills. That was not my job.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, personally. I meant just as speaker and you're running the floor, day-to-day operations of the floor. Was there a bill that ever failed?
I don't recall. I can tell you this, that a bill didn't normally get to the floor unless we felt it was worthwhile.
Right. So that was my first lesson when somebody said something to me, having this really robust debate about the bill. I'm like, oh, this bill might go down. And you're kind of holding votes and watching all this. And it passed. I'm like, oh, I thought we were going to have that. We're going to defeat that bill. And the person, it was a Democratic colleague. Jeff, did anybody ever explain this to you? Nope. That was my first session. Like, if it gets to the floor, it's going to pass. And if it doesn't, before the third gavel goes down, they'll refer it back to committee to make sure it's either fixed or it does pass.
That's why I had so much trouble remembering, because generally speaking, it's gone through committee, and your committees are both majority and minority members. So a committee should really understand what the bill is. Mm-hmm. And if it's a problem bill, it should go to leadership early so that it can be taken care of, either amended or tossed to a committee where it will never see the light of day.
Yeah,
I had one of those committees.
That seems like rules is one of them, and then the other one is rules is life support. But if it goes to ways and means with the fiscal, and if you're in a bad fiscal thing, it dies down there. So you had the victory group, and then you did you keep that victory pack when you were part of the victory group, or how did that work? Well, you were leader, did that stay with the leadership?
Yeah, I didn't keep it. I raised money for it.
Okay.
There's no question about that. And then the time came when me to get out of that business. And really, one of the difficulties that we had eventually down the road is that's got to be replaced with somebody who is willing to make the contacts and has the contacts to raise the money that you need to run campaigns. Mm-hmm. Because you get back to the point where the other side doesn't have any trouble raising money.
Nope.
And consequently, it's back to the old story. If you've got enough money, you've got a better shot at winning.
It takes money. It takes resources.
It takes door to door.
Right. But the other part
Remember,
was,
whenever I got a hold of a new legislator, door to door and raise money. Those were the two comments.
Make your phone calls.
2 sentences.
Yeah. Make phone calls and
visit the homes.
What I didn't like doing, to be very frank, was phone calls to get people to introduce myself to vote. I'd rather go knock on the door.
No,
loved to go. I'd rather go knock on doors, because as a police officer, when I showed up to somebody's doorstep, it was usually something bad. I wasn't going to get invited in for cookies and ice cream, because somebody was probably going to end up going to jail, or at least there was a problem that we got called there for. And when wasn't in uniform and just sitting there having a conversation with people, I was like, nobody's trying to kill me. It's a good day. Nobody's yelling at me because I'm a police officer and going to do something and take a family member away. And I just really enjoy that conversation piece, because it's just, just keep talking and keep talking. And finally they'll.
Well, remember I talked about how the boys handle a lot of my constituency calls.
Yeah.
Those constituency calls were every bit as important as the visits, because it was them contacting us and asking for help or information.
Constituent
And
services, big deal.
Tie in, you bet.
Yeah, that's
communications.
Yep, that's the constant in this business.
Hey, this has been fun.
Yeah, this is the constant. So my back to basics approach is getting government simpler, and you have seen regulatory burdens upon business, and that's kind of, I think, how you got the business community to really invest in races and get to the majority. What's the things that your takeaways watching politics now, how much you watch to it, or just kind of listen to your sons, what's going on? Where are we going wrong as a government body and the bureaucratic state and rulemaking and things like that, where we got to just kind of reel some stuff in to get government functioning in the direction like it's supposed to be?
Well, if you're talking about the legislature, there's a little bit of criticism for both sides. The legislature should be working together to take care of the problems of the state and the problems of their clients, and not fighting one another. And I hear a lot of this negative challenge, both in the way campaigns are run. You know, the old times, you ran a campaign and it was positive. And now there's so much negatives in every campaign that it dirties the water, is what I would term. And it's extremely important. If you hit me in the nose and then come back and want my help, the likelihood of my being receptive is going to be negative.
Right.
If you're a legislator and you call me names, represent me inappropriately in campaigns, and that individual gets elected, how do you think they're going to work in cooperation? And what you need in the legislature is total cooperation. You don't have to vote for the same things. You don't have to support the same things, but cooperate on the things that will be helpful, that are meaningful.
Right.
And go ahead and vote no when you really have one you don't like. But the answer to me was in that children and families legislation that was so important to me. It was people on both sides of the aisle that helped me accomplish that. That makes sense?
It does. No, it does, because I think campaigns have gotten personal.
Oh, terribly.
And one thing that I learned,
by the way, it's at the national level, if not more.
It's at every level.
Yeah.
And even the school board, these nonpartisan position school boards, and it's like, how about we just have a debate? Get on the soapbox in the town square and have a conversation about what's going on and how you can fix problems, or how you see getting people in the room. Because I always talk about making sure I'm in the room with the smart people in it, because if I'm the smartest one in the room, I'm in the wrong room, because I want to be around people that have different ideas, different thought processes, and how do you come together as a group to come up with a good piece of legislation or good ideas. Because if you're in the same echo chamber, oh, the Democrats are bad, oh, the Republicans are bad, you just hear that over and over again. It's like,
you begin to believe it. That's the problem.
You're right. That's exactly right. And what I learned, especially with campaigns, was since Oregon, it was considered the wild, wild west, and there was no campaign finance limits and donations and how much money can be raised. I mean, there's a race that we lost, $1.2 million was spent. And there's negative ads, and you have to have X amount of flyers going out. And people were kind of looking at some of these campaigns as just as, it was their payday for every 2 years. Mike McLean, when he was leader, and then when I was asking him questions about things, says, Jeff, there's 3 bears that you can't poke all at the same time as a Republican leader. You've got the business bear, you got the life bear, and you got the gun bear. Those 3 bears you can't poke all at once. You might get away with poking one of them, maybe 2 of them, but you can't poke all 3 at once, because that's just going to spell disaster. And I poked a bear that I didn't really realize. I knew the bear was there, but I poked a bear. The 4th bear was the consultant bear. And there's some good consultants out there that do good work, but then there's some consultants out there, they're just vendors. It's a vending machine. Push the button and see what comes out of the vending machine. It might be a good product, might be a bad product. Oh, it has misspellings on the flyer, whatever it is. And that caused some consternation for me when I became leader, because I wanted to come in and change the way we do business. And I was fighting that fight too. And it's like, man, all I want to do is win. We've got a plan. Let's win. And then just the inner workings of all that. It's like, come on, people, are we going to roll in the same direction, or is it about making money? And sometimes they just, well, we have to do it this way. So we've always done it. We've always done it that same way. We need to do something different because what we're doing now is not working.
Well, it's interesting because that's one of the things that we took on, but we decided it was more important for us to pick our own consultants than the professional consultants. And I ran into some difficulty along those lines that you did. But to be perfectly honest, poking bears is a good part of the process of leadership.
Right.
For example, we talked about the cost of going to college. And I did a study and found that professors were really working 6 hours a week and writing their papers the rest of the time. And I went after them. Well, that was a bear that bites back. But it didn't make any difference. We accomplished some things in getting more dollars spent on teaching than printing or publishing.
Yeah.
Weren't completely successful. But a little success sometimes is satisfying.
Yeah, a few little wins here and there make a difference. You can't, if you get 5-yard football analogy, get the first 2 or 3 yards and then didn't get your first down, but keep chipping away at it, get a first down and live to fight another day. Keep living to fight another day to win that. And so I want to have you do a look back in your career and from your time as a legislator, minority leader, speaker, and then in your lobby group. What's one key lesson that you learned that you would like to share with leaders of today?
I think that you should look at basically what's most important to you as an individual. And what was most important to me as an individual was my wife, my 4 sons. I just lost my wife.
Yeah.
And I'll share with you that you can do all these other things, but if you don't have your family, and if you're not taking care of your family, you're not going to be a good legislator or a good leader, because the strength of direction is the thing that's most important to you. And to me, that was family.
You shared something there that was touching. I remember, your wife came in and, thanks for sharing that moment. She was there, and I know she meant a lot to you, and it's tough. I lost my dad in July or last August and stuff, and it was tough. But you echoed something that somebody said on the House floor when they were, it's actually Representative Bosshart Davis, when we had our orientation. Senator Courtney was there, and Senator Courtney says, "You didn't get here alone. You had people that helped you get here. Don't leave alone." And the message was, pay attention to family.
Yeah. Of course, Peter was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Peter's the one who
Peter's
said,
story?
Peter's story is, he said, Larry Campbell taught me how to be a good minority leader.
That's a good story there.
But we were actually pretty close.
Yeah.
And we would walk, Kevin and I, or Craig and I would walk into his office. Oh, the Campbells are here again. What do you want? We just want to visit, Peter.
Just want to say hi.
But he was a great, great leader in many ways.
Right.
And I always respected him.
Yeah. I remember the first time I met him, and I had my kids with me. It was, they had the State of the State address. It was Governor Brown. We're up in the lounge, and he's in there. My kids are just kind of bumping around. Right, kids out of here. Just grumpy. Kind of looking at him like, why are you being so grumpy?
That's Peter.
It's Peter, right? I didn't know that, but I was like, hey, I got my little kids here. You're dropping, my kids are here. Come on, stop. I think that's.
Well, I think he was a freshman legislator when I was speaker. He was the minority leader.
Yeah. Well, you schooled him well then.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what's missing now that I appreciate, and I think you'll agree. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but having those relationships. And since COVID, when 19 legislative body came in, when COVID happened, you had legislators that never had to have a conversation, have this interaction like we're doing right now. And then I think what's compounded that problem, I remember being in the lounge. Santa would come over, house was there, break bread.
The reconstruction of the Capitol is creating real problems in that area.
It's creating a lot of problems, but I think that's one problem that I see is an issue is like there's an us and them mentality, both sides. And you have to really work to go, hey, can we go grab a cup of coffee somewhere? Or how can I be helpful? And those relationships are big, and that's a missing piece of this.
You asked me if I had any disappointments or were unsuccessful in anything. I was renting an upstairs room in a garage as speaker, so that I didn't have to commute to Eugene. And I got up in the morning and the building was shaking. This takes you back to the earthquake that we had, and immediately
early 90s.
They got in touch with me and wanted me to come and look at the damage and gave me a complete tour of the Capitol and I saw all the damage that we had, and we had a lot of damage. And I put together a package to basically rebuild the Capitol, and then took it to my caucus, and they and my fellow legislators who were Democrats decided it was too expensive to go forward with it. Well, you see what should have been done then is being done now at a much, much higher price.
Oh, yes.
But it's also got to have an effect on the relationships that you don't have today among legislators because the timing and the location isn't effective for it.
Right. They have a small room where they kind of lounge, but it's just not quite the same thing. They had really good food too in the lounge. I really liked that. The breakfast, lunch. Let's talk about you were a delegate in 2016 to the RNC.
There were very few openings left when Tom Stewart and I decided that we should be delegates to the convention. And the only openings for Oregon were CASIC delegates. And so Tom and I looked at each other and said, we could be CASIC delegates. And when we got back to the convention, Kasich refused to come to the convention. He was the governor of Ohio, where the convention was being held, and he got crosswise with the Republicans and decided that he was not going to do that. So we basically ended up being Trump delegates. So I can always say that I was a delegate for Trump
nice.
in that national convention. And what a great experience it was.
Yeah. So that was you. Ben Carson was in that too,
16.
Right?
Yeah.
I
still send money to Ben Carson.
Yeah, I like that guy. I was listening to him on a podcast, and he talked about how to reform the insurance, how the relationships between patients and the doctors and the insurance carriers was create. Everybody gets an HSA card, and that when they get, that means they can put money into it and it can carry over from one family member to another, and it doesn't, and it rolls over and keeps rolling over. You have high deductible insurance policies for these catastrophic events. He goes, that will change the relationship with doctors and patients because it can be on a cash basis and they don't have to go through all the paperwork, and they actually get paid. And, my wife's a physician and she's going through the whole thing right now, the pay parity. And the whole insurance business is just like so complicated now. And then you have, Obamacare that came in and really upset the apple cart on stuff. And they're talking about wanting to have all the universal health care and how many billions of dollars is that going to be for Oregonians and stuff. And it's just, there's just little simple things that just I think we can do better at.
Well, we have a terrible situation today in the medical field because we don't have enough doctors. Mm-hmm. I think I had a problem here a while back that took me 18 days to get an appointment. Oh, come on in.
Yeah, had an extra guest come in.
We're through, aren't we?
Yeah, we got a little bit left, but yeah, we're good. So talk about, you talk about doctors. You kind of finish your thought on that.
Well, my doctor, who I'd had for 20 some years, decided to retire and become a concierge doctor. And basically, I said, sign me up. And that was in December. In January, he committed suicide. He had retired at 52 years old. And it was because of the process that, he had other problems. obviously, but none of
Right.
us knew. And getting a replacement doctor is almost impossible.
Right.
Anyway, just another opportunity.
Yeah, we have opportunities. Transportation's in front of us right now. That's a big one. You got to figure that out. So you've given me advice through what you put down on paper for me or conversations. But what's one thing for me moving forward, going into the Senate? And then the other thing is the back to basics approach to governance. What's your piece of advice for me hopefully getting over to the Senate? And then I'll finish the last question up and we'll finish the podcast.
Well, I'll send you a 15-page
Oh, please do. I'll read it. I still have, to be very frank, I have that piece of paper. I have your handwritten notes, and I have the copy of the Willamette Week. It is sitting in a folder in my gun safe.
Oh, bless you. You've already set the right example in the right direction. And my advice is keep going the way you are. Continue to be serious about doing the people's work.
Okay.
And in order to provide the future is work hard to teach people how to run for election and then help leadership in selecting qualified candidates. How's that?
That's a good one. And it goes back to, for me, when you talked about family and people, Jeff, why do you do this? And you saw my desk when I was leader, and then my desk hasn't changed much, just moved down a couple rows or a couple over on the aisle, but I just have my picture of my family there. I've got my kids, my mom, my dad.
Always.
I've got that sitting there. And I'm like, well, why do you do this, Jeff? It's for my kids and your kids and our future kids, because I want Oregon to be a place where people want to stay, not just visit. And you can talk about McCall and visit, but don't stay. But people are leaving because we're not business friendly. Our environment's not good for business, and high taxes. And that's my approach, and that's what I think I want that's what my back to basics army to be, is a group of people that can push legislators when it comes to emails, phone calls, all those things like that, to influence the legislators and to do the right things.
Well, I lost the love of my life. We spent 63 years together. And my back bar behind my desk has 27 pictures of her. I have her ring and her necklace. And what I would share is that the strength of your life is based on who you live with. And I would recommend that the first objective, as I've already said in this commentary, is your family. And it isn't that they need you. You need them.
Right.
And thanks for letting me join you today.
Hey, Larry, I appreciate it. Back to Basics Army. I got to interview a legend today, Larry Campbell, and he's taught me so much. I really appreciate everything you've done and what you've done for the state, but also what you've done for me personally, just having times to talk to me, and I really appreciate it. Next episode's coming up, folks. You're going to enjoy it.